Alright everyone, we are going to go ahead and get started. I am going to start showing my screen pretty soon, but let me just fix a few things first. We are live. We are going over the supplemental application process, so let me fix a few things and we will go live soon, hopefully. Someone is asking if this is gonna be recorded. Yes, it will be recorded. Yes. I am recording it. Let me go to YouTube and figure this thing out, because last time I had a lot of technical issues, and let me see if so if anyone is online and listening to me right now, can you just wave your hand and let me know if you can hear me, okay? Just wave your hand. Just wave your hand and let me know if you can hear me. Hello? Let me know if you can hear me. You are in the right spot if you are looking to get help with supplementals for dental school. Alright, I am going to start very soon. I haven't put up my presentation out yet. I'm just sharing my screen with you to show you what software I use. It's called OBS 19.0. So okay, so I am going. I'm getting some more questions right now that I'm adding to the list that I already put together. So bear with me for a few seconds, because that means that I'm gonna cover more questions for you guys. So just give me 1 second, maybe a few seconds. Okay, you guys can hear me. That's great news. Let me take a sip of green tea, because I just made it and I need to stay awake during the presentation. Alright, that tea tastes good. Ooh, Ohio State. I'm covering a bunch of schools today, and I didn't plan to do that initially, but I'm doing it because a lot of students are asking, let's go over BU, let's go over Buffalo, let's go over Ohio State, and let's go over VCU. Someone was asking about Eastern Carolina. Eastern Carolina has really tough questions, and I do plan to cover that. And some questions are, why Iowa State? I don't really know why Iowa State. Okay, Iowa State, I'll probably touch it, just a few. And UCLA and Iowa, they're probably asking you the same thing. Why are you applying to UCLA? Why are you applying to Iowa? So I am going to cover that maybe in the random section, or okay. So guys, I'm going to go ahead and get it started pretty soon. It's 5 minutes after 10, so I think it would be a good idea if we can get it started, because I do have to catch a flight today. Unfortunately, I didn't plan to do that. I do have to catch a flight at 2:30, so I'm gonna have to leave my house at 12:30. So let's make this webinar pretty quick. I'm thinking of maybe 60 to 75 minutes. But hopefully by then, I just have a lot of information that I have to present today, which makes it a bit challenging. So I'm shooting for 75 minutes to 80 minutes. But hopefully we can achieve that with you guys helping me out, because if you have any question about your supplementals that you have not already sent me, I would like you to send me right now, because in the middle of the presentation I probably won't be able to go ahead and take random questions, because I just have a really tight schedule today. So I know if you are watching, so go ahead and send me your questions at dentalschoolcoach@gmail.com. So let me type that email address again, dentalschoolcoach@gmail.com. So that's my email address for my business. And please send it to me on that specific web page, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to answer it in the middle of the webinar. The reason is that I just have a really tight packed schedule for the webinar, and you'll see what I mean, because I plan to cover a lot of schools. I plan to cover Boston University, VCU. VCU has a lot of questions. Maryland, and then I'm covering Buffalo. I'm also covering UCLA, Eastern Carolina, Ohio State. Some random questions about what are some of the things that you have not shared with the application process. All right. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys. So let me know if you can see my screen, because that's what's going to determine how successful this webinar is going to be. And I also have a second screen because I want to make sure that I told you guys I am hyper control freak. I want to make sure that everything is going all right. I want to make sure that things are running properly. And that's why I have three screens set up right in front of me, so that I can look at what the hell is going on and kind of fix it in the middle of the webinar if I need to. All right, so let's go ahead, guys. Let's get started. This is gonna be amazing. Let's give me 75 minutes of your life, and I'll show you how to write a lot of supplemental statements. Okay, let's go ahead. You are in the right place if you need help with dental school supplemental applications. All right, if you are not looking for that, this is not the place for you. I mean, if you're applying to med school and you need supplemental help, this is probably going to help you out as well. However, I feel that it's just specific to dental school. I don't want to waste your time. You can always listen to it later for the specific part that are very similar between med school and dental school. I do have a lot of med students that I'm helping out every year, so some of the questions of the supplementary statements are pretty similar. So it's fine to stick around if you're applying to med school versus dental school. But let's go ahead and let's begin. So who the heck is dental school coach? I mean, I used this slide for the last presentation as well, so I pretty much used it again because I feel that I don't have much to say about myself except what I have done. So you can see I'm a UPenn graduate. I have got accepted to 5 schools: UPenn, UCSF, NYU, Rutgers, and Pittsburgh. I started dental school coach in 2014 because I felt that this was something a lot of the students were asking me to do. They needed help with their application process, and I was just helping one-on-one. I wanted to scale that process. I wanted to make I wanted to make impact on a lot of students. I have coached about 500 students so far, more than 500. So 420 plus is underestimated. My success rate is about 97%, and a lot of my students got into really good schools, including Harvard, Penn, Columbia, UCSF, and many more schools that you can think of. Just a bigger list of schools that my students got accepted to. Hashtag bragging. Well, let's go back to the slide. I really like this slide. It took me like maybe 30 minutes to put this slide together because I had to download all the pictures and kind of like put it all together. So I'm really proud of that. But anyways, let's not digress. Here's some nice things what people are saying about me. So I really like nice things. I like to hear nice things about myself and my business. So I put it out there. More nice things. And Justin, this guy, I did a DAT interview with him. So if you need any help with DAT, this guy is your guy. This is your guy. And more stuff are coming. More good stuff. I am gonna stop talking about testimonials very soon. So let's do this. Let's jump right in and talk about supplemental application. The first application that I'm going to touch today is Boston University. And the reason I'm going to touch Boston University is, number one, like NYU, it's a huge program. They probably take about 200 students, which makes it the second largest program in the country. I could be wrong, but that's my understanding. A ton of people apply there because it's international student friendly, it's out of state friendly, it's a private school, costs hell lot of money, but it's a great place. It's in Boston, and it's a really nice urban environment and provides a great education. So the questions that Boston University asks are, number one, why do you wish to pursue your education at GSDM? The Goldman something dental, School of Dental Medicine. So, why do you want to come to Boston University? That's the basic question they're asking. And the second question is, how are you going to contribute to our classroom? How are you going to contribute to the classes, school, and community? So let's jump right in. So I didn't have a chance to talk a lot about specific examples in this webinar compared to last webinar that I've done, because the sheer volume of questions that I have for today are just a lot. It's just a lot of questions. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to talk as slowly as as possible to give you some good idea as to what are some of the answers that are acceptable for this kind of supplemental questions. So this is a question that I covered for other schools. So why UPenn, why NYU, why UCSF? We covered those questions in the last webinar. So feel free to go back and watch the webinar after this webinar session. That would be a great webinar to go ahead and listen to, because it's just a jam-packed session. You'll learn a ton about dental school supplementals, specifically how to answer different questions. Now, first of all, when you talk about why one school versus other school, you always want to talk about their academic and clinical strength. So let me repeat that. You always want to talk about their clinical and academic strength. So what does that mean? The clinical strength mean how good their clinic is. What is the level of commitment they show to their student to improve their clinical skills and manual dexterity, stuff like that. So what are some of the technology that the schools have? What are some of the clinical opportunities the schools have? What is the patient pool like? So some school that are kind of semi-urban or maybe suburban or rural schools, they don't have a great variety of patient population that you will get at let's say a school like Boston University or NYU or Philadelphia, schools like Temple or Penn in the East Coast. I don't know much about the West Coast. So schools like UCSF or UCLA, because they're urban, they have a great population, patient pool of that you can practice on and learn from. So that's a great, place that. Let's take a back step. This patient population really helps you to improve your clinical skills. So number one, you should always talk about the clinical strength of the program. And Boston University is one of the best programs, from a clinical perspective. There are, you are more likely to become a great general dentist from Boston University, albeit that there are a specialist program in this school. And you have to find specific examples from their website, from their Facebook pages, and from their students to talk about their clinical strength. So one thing that I recommended in the last webinar video, was to reach out to a Boston University or NYU or UCSF student through Facebook. Go to their Facebook page and kind of show them that you're interested in the school and you want to learn more about the school, and set up like a 5-minute phone call or 10-minute phone call, or ask them a few questions over Facebook or over email and find out what is Boston University's clinical strength. Why is it that Boston University is differentiated from other schools in terms of their clinics? The second thing is research. Boston University has a huge name. It's a name brand in research university, especially in the dental school setting. Even for med school, they have a huge university. It's not just a graduate level program. They have an undergraduate school as well as med school and dental school. So they have a huge number of labs that you can work in if you are interested in that research option. So definitely talk about the research. And one thing that you should specifically mention is what specific research topics interests you. Talk about that specifically. If you find a specific research mentor that you want to or wish to work for, talk about him as well, and that's going to improve your chances of getting accepted to the school. Talk about their externship opportunities. I know that Boston University has a few global externship program and also some internal internship program within the U.S. And definitely mention about that because that's what is going to make you stand out as a unique candidate. Now, also talk about their location and patient population, which you can connect with the clinical strength, as I mentioned before. In terms of the location, Boston is in the middle of a city. It's an urban school, so you're gonna get a lot of opportunities to interact with patients from different places, and also patients with different different dental related problems, and that will improve your chances of becoming a great clinicians at the end of the day. All right, enough of that first question, and this is a very common question. It's going to come up repeatedly for other schools, why UCSF, why UCLA, stuff like that, or why U Maryland, this question comes up pretty much all the time. So I want you to focus on a few things. I want you to focus on these 4 options that I mentioned, and these 4 bullet points. If you focus on this, you would be able to answer the same question for other schools. For example, why NYU, why Michigan, stuff like that. All right. So if you have any question in the meantime, send me a chat. I'll most likely going to take them at the very end. I'm not gonna stop the flow of the presentation. The second question is, what will be your contribution? And let's go back to the slide where I kind of mentioned the question. Envision yourself as a dental student. So they're trying to tell you that put yourself in the dental student's shoes, and tell us, what are you going to contribute to the classroom? Okay? What will be your contribution? What are some of the extracurricular activities? What are some of the interests that you have? What are some of the characteristics and talents that you have that will help you excel in dental school? And also, not just help you excel, but help others do better in dental school. And this question is a bit tricky because a lot of students, you guys feel like, oh, I don't have any specific strength, I don't have any specific experiences, I don't have any specific things that I can talk about. But that that's not necessarily true. So let's jump back to the question. Think about the interests, activities, experiences, characteristics, and talents. So those are the 5 options that you have. Jot down a few things that you can think of that you have a good skill in, things that you're good at, and then focus on what can you teach others, what can you help others with, and that's a basic idea. So let me give you an example. So for example, you are a certified dental assistant and you've been doing it for the last 2 years or last 1.5 years, and through that experience you've gained a lot of diverse ranges of patient experiences, and you learned about and perform many dental procedures. So that really gives you a lot of clinical relevant clinical experiences that you can help other students with who did not come with an extensive clinical background. And that's just one way of saying it. That's just one way of mentioning how you can help other students. If you have not been a CDA, if you have not been a RDA certified or registered dental assistant, what are some of the skills or extracurricular activities that you have had? So for example, if you have led a club, if you have led your sorority or fraternity, or if you have done those stuff, what about that leadership skills can you help other students with? Can you form study groups? Can you help organize oral cancer work, or organize a patient like a volunteering experience at the dental school? What are you trying to do as a future dental student in this school? Can you organize some sort of like group activities, or can you organize some sort of clubs in the school? Can you help the research faculties do research? For example, if you have been passionate about research, you can talk about how you are going to do research in dental school and solve XYZ problems for a specific research team. You have to do some further research within the specific research opportunities that you're going to look into. But this is the framework that you should always follow. You have to describe the learning that you had from an activity. So for example, if you have been an RDA, it's the clinical experiences that you got. If you have been a researcher in undergraduate or post undergraduate, it's that learning about it's the learning from the research that you have that you can showcase, and then you have to show how you can contribute and be specific about that. So for example, don't just say I wanna help my future classmates. That's very generic. Say that I wanna help my future classmates who did not come from an extensive clinical background, or who did not come with an extensive clinical background. So that's more specific than just saying I want to help my fellow classmates. So for example, if you're very good with computers, right, and have used a few medical softwares, you can help your classmates with understanding the dental softwares or understanding technical side of dentistry better. So that's just one example. How can you have to think about in terms of the 5 specific criteria that the school presented to you, you have to think about how, through those activities, through those interests that you have, through the characteristics, how can you help others? Any question? This is a really tricky question. I got maybe 5. I got this question from 5 people, so I want to ask you guys. I want to ask you if I've answered if I've answered it sufficiently enough, and if you are satisfied with the answer that I provided. Otherwise, I can go on and on this, because a lot of the students that I have, they're applying to Boston University, and students on my email list also have asked about this Boston University question. So I definitely want to make sure that you understood. So send me a chat saying that you understood. Say yes. All right, I'm moving to the next one. Let me take a sip of water. Alrighty, so next question is about VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University. So VCU is a great program, and they also ask you really hard questions, and that's not a good thing because it makes you think a lot, right? So in terms of VCU, they're just making the barrier higher, because I feel that the schools they're asking about 5 questions that are kind of tricky. They're not very easy. So the first one, this is a question that I went over for NYU as well, and I'm kind of repeating here. What one accomplishment, academic, professional, or personal, are you most proud of, and why? So when they ask you about an accomplishment, they're always searching to know about what have you done that you're most proud of. They are not really focused on the end result. They're more focused on the process of how did you get to the end result. So they're more interested in learning the struggle that you faced towards achieving that accomplishment. So for example, let's say you just started learning how to swim as an adult. So you're probably going to a swimming class at the age of 23. You're not very good at it, right? In the beginning, initially you're kind of like challenged by the process. I'm 27-year-old and I don't know how to swim. So I'm giving that example. So you start taking some swimming classes, swimming lessons, and etc. And you started to do better slowly, but gradually. And eventually, within a year or two, you became really good at swimming, that you're competing at the state level, or you're competing with other people, like in an intramural team or in a swimming team of your school. Essentially become really good at something, and that's the most significant accomplishment you can talk about. But the more important part in this accomplishment is the hard work, it's the struggle that you put in, and that's what you need to highlight. Because when they say, why are you so proud of this, and the reason is always that you put a lot of work into this, and that's what makes you proud. Unacceptable answers are, if you talk about, I have a high GPA, that's unacceptable, because unless you showcase that you have a high GPA just because you have struggled a lot in college. Let's say you have a learning disability and you have struggled to learn a lot, learn through the materials in college, and that's why you have a high GPA, that's okay. But if you do not have a learning disability or ADHD or whatever, and you go through the process of saying that I have a high GPA and that's one of the biggest accomplishments, I have a 4.0, that's a bad answer, because dental schools already have your transcript in front of them. Tell them something they don't know about you. Tell them, show something about your side, your personality that they do not have, or they did not have exposed to. So that's why this question becomes really tricky for a lot of people, because a lot of people don't know what their accomplishments are, and this question will take you some internal soul searching before you find an answer, and you have to. So you have to talk about, something that showcases the personal side of you, and that's the struggle that you go through. That's the accomplishment you make at the end of the struggle. Someone is asking if it is a bad idea to talk about your improvement throughout college, unless you have, excuse me. Unless you have a really terrible GPA in the first 2 years of your college curriculum, I think it's a bad idea, because a lot of people are gonna have really bad freshman GPA and then they improve over the next 2-3 years. So talking about a bad GPA doesn't really it doesn't really make a good accomplishment. Think about something else, and you can think about academic, professional, or personal. So a lot of people talk about the research, which is perfectly fine. Getting published in a research article or presenting at a really prestigious presentation place is an accomplishment, and you can talk about that. But can you talk about learning to play the piano for 10 years? I doubt that it's a good answer. It's not a good answer. The reason it's not a good answer is that it's not substantiated by someone who is an authority within the within piano or any kind of music field. So let's say you're learning to play the piano for 5-6 years, and then you are working really hard at it, and you are one of the state champion, or you are you're playing at the top concerts or orchestra and whatnot. I mean, I don't even know about piano, but I'm just making this up. You are playing at a really good place, a good concert or something, and that's something that's an accomplishment you can talk about. It's something that is tangible. It's something that we can touch, right? The fact that you have performed at a really significant event. But if you just say I learned piano for 10 years without any kind of showcasing of your skill or of your abilities, it doesn't really make a good case. All right, so moving on to the next question. Tell us about a time when someone misunderstood something you said or wrote. How did you make yourself clear? What was the outcome? I feel that this is a very tough question to write about, and the reason it's tough is because for most of you who are native English speaker, I'm assuming that most of the time you're probably gonna be saying the things that you want to say in a logical fashion, and people would understand you. But if you're a foreign student, if you have let's say you're coming from a different country and you have difficult explaining in English, and because of that you had some situation in your life where someone misunderstood you, that would be a better scenario to talk about. But if you're a native English speaker and you don't have many experiences like when people misunderstood you, people always understood you, you can definitely have a hard time writing this question. No, so here's the thing. When someone asks you about this, when VCU is asking you about this question, they're essentially trying to see how do you communicate. So this is the more bigger picture. How do you communicate despite facing misunderstanding, or despite not being able to explain something to a person in the first time? And the example that I can talk about is a group project or a project that you have to work with the team, right? So in that setting, you have many people that you're working with, and kind of it's kind of a situation where you're working with this group of people, and then someone didn't understand what maybe you were taking the leadership option in that group, and someone didn't really understand what you're doing or the direction that you're going with, and they misunderstood one of the direction that you gave them, and they did completely the opposite thing that you want them to do, and that's a huge misunderstanding, and the group project is at stake. It's probably 40% of your grade, and at that point you took him outside, set him down for coffee or something. I don't know, I'm making this up. You're talking to him over coffee, and basically you clarified your intention first, what you wanted to say, but you can say that you apologize for the misunderstanding that happened, even though it's not your fault. You apologized, and you kind of made it clear so that he has a better direction going forward. So again, this is a tough question. And if you don't have many experiences where people misunderstood you, it's gonna be a tough thing to write. And again, it's not an easy question. But if you're let's say you're a non-native English speaker and you're coming from a different country, and you're trying to say something that the other person completely didn't understand, or excuse me, they thought it to be something completely different than what you intended it to be. So that's an easy answer to talk about. But again, it's gonna be a cliche because a lot of the non-native speakers are gonna talk about that. So if you have anything specific that you can talk about regarding misunderstanding, I think that would be a good topic to discuss. Again, if you have any question about this, type it in the chat box. I will go back to the chat and kind of review the questions that come. The next question is, describe an ethical dilemma you might face as a dental provider and how will you resolve it, or how you will resolve it. So this is a tough question. Again, the reason is that ethical dilemma is huge in dental field, especially with the propagation of corporate dentistry, because a lot of the corporate dentists, they are under pressure to perform and to provide a lot of revenue for the corporate. So because of the stress, because of the pressure, they sometimes do things that are not ethical. They sometimes do things, for example, tell you that you need 10 fillings, or you need to do 10 procedures where you only need like 4 or 5. So you're probably paying double the money. Your insurance is paying double the money. You're paying double the money out of pocket so that he can profit out of that, right? So that's those sort of things are very common in dentistry right now. So for example, sometimes corporate they're trying to cut costs and improve their revenue. So sometimes they would use poor material in to do or like low branded material for their procedures, and that might be a challenge because sometimes, let's say you are taking an impression with a low grade amalgam material, and then somehow the impression wasn't a very good one, and the denture that you produce for the patient does not come out to be the one that the patient really needs. So it becomes really uncomfortable for the patient, and once you try to change it for the patient and give him a new denture, it's a money waste, it's a time waste, and also it's an ethical dilemma for your dental practice. All right, so those are some of the examples that you can talk about, and these are the ethical dilemma you're going to face as a patient. Sorry, as a future dentist. Is there any question about this question? Is there any question about this question? All right. So let me move to the next question. Describe a situation when you faced adversity. How did you react? Okay, so describe a situation when you faced adversity and how did you react? So first of all, this is a pretty straightforward question, and one of the technique that I showed you in the last video, in the last webinar, is the STAR technique. So situation, action, situation. I can't even remember this now. Sorry, STAR. So situation, task, action, and result. So the STAR technique that I showed last time is basically, what situation are you in? What is the situation that you're facing? What is the task that you're assigned to? So what is the problem that you're facing, right? And then what is the action that you took to resolve that challenge, resolve that problem, and then finally the result. So the result is basically the fact that you came up, after taking the action, you came up with the result from the action, and that's basically the framework that I propose students to write with. And when you're looking at a adverse situation, you can have a lot of adversities in your life. So pick one and kind of go with it. The most important thing here is to show your action. How did you react? What action did you take? So for example, we probably had some tough time in college. Maybe our girlfriends broke up with us, or our boyfriends broke up with us, something like that. I'm just making this up again. Maybe one of our parents died, or maybe our cat died. I don't know, like some adverse situation happened, or maybe you had a tough injury, or maybe you had a tough time studying for a class because it was so challenging, and you probably have a lot of responsibilities on your shoulder, and this was a tough time for you. Okay, so this was a tough time for you, and in that moment, what did you do? Did you stress out? Did you Did you kind of like take a step back and think about what are some of the options you have as a at the moment you're in that position? So talk about that. So for example, one of the biggest challenge for me was or biggest adversity that I faced was my mother's illness. So my mother became sick when I got accepted to dental school, and I was supposed to go to Penn. And at that moment, I saw that okay, I have to take care of my mother, both financially and also by being close to her. And because of that, at that moment, I chose not to go to dental school, and I felt that it would be it would not be wise for me because I would not be able to focus on my studies at the same time because my mother was sick. But dental school is really heavily intense with their rigor of courses. So I would not be able to focus in that rigorous environment while my mom is undergoing treatment. So that was the time I decided to step out of dental school and not attend, because I felt that at that moment I would not be able to put my 100% in dental school. So that is one example I can always share. So what's your example? What are some of the adversities you face? So I guess list it out for like 5-6 examples, and then pick one and show how you reacted in that specific moment. Alright, so if you have any question about this, shoot me a chat. Now the next question is, why VCU? It's the same question that Boston University is asking. So I'm not going to cover it as in much detail because I don't know much about VCU. What you need to do is do your research on the website, school website, on the Facebook page, on the LinkedIn page, wherever you get more information from. And other thing you should do is reach out to students at the school through Facebook. And to be honest with you, a lot of the students are willing. They're willing to talk to you about their school because they want you to go there. So reach out to a few students, maybe one or two would get back to you for a 5-minute call or 10-minute call, and you can ask them any question you have about VCU. But do this after you do your research on the internet first. All right, so the next school is Maryland. So the reason I'm covering this school is because it's a really good school, first of all, and it's not really partial to out-of-state students. So it takes a lot of out-of-state students, and that makes it a good school for a lot of people to apply to. Their clinical program is really good. They had just rebuilt their clinic maybe a few years ago. So when I was applying, I didn't apply to Maryland because I didn't know much about the school, and I wasn't planning to go to Maryland. But it's a really good program. Their facilities are pretty brand new. So their dental simulation lab is state of the art, so stuff like that. So the clinical strength of the program is pretty good, and being in Maryland, so you're gonna be in somewhere in the DMV area, so I'm sure the patient population is gonna be also a good size, and also you're gonna get a lot of diverse cases at the school. And I don't know much about the research opportunities that you can get. But again, this is the research that you have to kind of find from the website, from the Facebook pages. So again, anytime you face these kind of questions in terms of why Maryland, why VCU sort of questions, look for their Facebook pages, because they always put up some kind of PR, public relations materials in their Facebook page to kind of attract the new students or showcase their strength as a clinical program. So, all right. So that's about that question. If you have any specific question about Maryland, feel free to email me, and I'll hook you up with some of the students that I have, and in that school. All right. So the next question is a really tough one. What does it mean to you to be ethical and have integrity? What does it mean to you to be ethical and have integrity? This is a really tough question because number one, you probably haven't faced a lot of situations that are ethically challenging or morally conflicting to you, and you had to make a decision about that. In the last video, I explained what ethical dilemma means and what does it mean to be ethical. But let me reiterate that again. So basically, in this question, you have to talk about a story from your life. Yeah. Such a weird question, to be honest with you. But in this question, what they're looking for is basically a story from your life that you can say, or discuss, and show that you had ethical, show that you had to face ethical challenges, but at the end of the day, you came out with the with the more ethical option for you, and you have integrity somehow. Somehow you are going to show that you have integrity. So let me give an example. So, as as a student, sometimes, let's say you're working for different volunteering organizations, and sometimes you're working at out of your university places, and you are working at a nonprofit. Let's say you're volunteering for a nonprofit that is heavily mismanaged. Sometimes people are taking money out of the funds, and trying to use that for their own purpose, and you have seen that being done at that level, and there are two decisions you can do. You can either stay quiet and not talk about it to anyone else, or you can probably talk about, let's say the treasurer of the nonprofit organization is stealing money. You can inform others about him stealing the money, and you can showcase the evidence that you had. So that's one example, and from that specific example, you can show that to be ethical means that it's just to speak up when you feel that the moral integrity of your values are being challenged, or something like when someone is not acting in the normative way that society prescribes, or something like that. Essentially you have to tell a story that shows. Essentially, you have to tell a story that shows that you have some sort of ethics. Now, what if you do not have some kind of story like that? And that's a tough spot to be on. So in that case, you have to do purely telling. Like, what does it mean for you to be ethical and having integrity as a future dentist? So, for example, you can talk about, as a future dentist, I'm dedicated to my patients, and I'm dedicated to their betterment, making them well, so that they don't have to spend more money because I'm prescribing them 10 medications instead of when they need only 2. Talk about, show them the future. If you have not done anything like what I mentioned before, you can always showcase the future. What does it mean for you to be a dentist in the future and be ethical and have integrity? Does that mean that you're gonna be cheating on your patients? You're gonna treat them unethically? Or what does it mean for you? Like, for example, you can say, my goal is to basically help my patients to get better quicker, or to provide the best alternative for my patients within the constraint that I have, but despite that, to provide the most ethical treatment that will help my patients get better quicker. Something like that, along that line. And again, this is a really tough question. This is not easy to talk about. So if you have some situation where you can talk about your specific, if you have a situation where you can talk about your specific ethical dilemma, circumstance that you faced, that's good, and you can mention that as a story. But if you do not have anything, showcase the future. Showcase what you're going to do in the future as a dentist, and how you're going to take care of your patients in the most ethical manner. Alright, so the next question is, who or what event was your first contact with the U Maryland School of Dentistry? Let me take a sip of water. Again, this is a really tough question. Because number one, if you're like applying from out of state, you don't know anyone from Maryland, and you can't really talk about that. But if you do know someone, definitely mention that. So what I do recommend is that reach out to a few students on Facebook. Reach out to 1 or 2 students on Facebook and tell them that you're interested in this school and you want to talk to them for 5-10 minutes, and you can mention that in your in this question. So if you leave it open, the schools are the school is thinking that you're not interested in them personally. You're not personally invested in them. But if you do reach out to someone because you don't know anyone at Maryland, it always looks good on your application. It looks that it shows that you are committed, you're invested in the school, and you're reaching out to people. And helping them become, you're not helping them, sorry. You're basically reaching out to people and then understanding more about this school. And it shows the level of commitment. Someone is asking about, is this last question, so let's go back to last question. What does it mean to be ethical and have integrity? So it's slightly different from the VCU question. So VCU question specifically asks you, tell me about a situation when you face ethical dilemma, or tell me about a situation as a future dentist that you're gonna face, or tell me about an ethical dilemma situation that you're gonna face in the future. So for Maryland, it's gonna be slightly different because they're asking a more abstract question. This is more open-ended. You don't have to showcase a future situation or a past situation. Honestly, you can just answer something that just tells them, this is what it means to be ethical for me. But the better answers are always showing a past experience or a vision of the future. Does that make sense, Noor? All right, so that's that. So do you guys have any questions as to the supplementals that I went through so far? I went through Boston University, VCU, and Maryland. The next question is, discuss on activity or experiences that you have listed in the AADSAS application that provides evidence of your leadership skills or self-initiative. This is a question similar to, I think, UCSF. UCSF, I think, asks about a leadership question. So this is very much the same thing. You have to follow the STAR framework: situation, task, action, and result. So what was the activity that you're part of? What was the task that you had to do as a leader? What was the action that you take? And what was the result? So first of all, many of you are not going to be like the leader that we are seeking in the future. So maybe you're not the president of your pre-dental club. Maybe you're not someone who likes to take a lot of initiative. So it would be tough for you to answer that. If you're already a leader, if you're leading your fraternity, or if you're leading a club, you can easily talk about the activities that you do. But the more important thing is to talk about a story if you have the space to talk about. But if you do not have those activities, I know many of you don't. So let me provide some guidance on that. So in terms of initiative, if you are part of a club and let's say you are raising funds for flood victims in some random country, despite not being the leader, right? So you came up with the initiative, you came up with the fundraising goals and plans, and started to do some campaigning for raising that fund. That's an activity that you can showcase. You can also talk about some other self-initiative that you have taken. So for example, if you have like for me, I can always talk about dental school coach as a initiative, but a lot of people don't have that kind of initiative that they have taken in their lives. So find something that you have done as a student. It does not have to be something really dazzling or sexy accomplishments. It has to be something that that is just showing that you are someone who likes to take action. You're not someone just sitting on your ass and doing nothing, but you like to take action. So for example, one of my really good friend, when Trayvon Martin died back in 2012 or 13, I think, by George Zimmerman, one of my friend organized a campaign protest on campus, and she called it the hoodie campaign. And she didn't do it part of any club or any activity, but when she started when she started the campaign, when she started the protest, a lot of my other friends started joining in, and eventually eventually she had 1,000 people protesting against killing of innocent African American male, and that became a huge thing for her, and now she's at Harvard Law School because of that specific accomplishment. And she wasn't like leading a specific club or leading any specific volunteer organization. She was just taking an action because she felt that it was wrong to kill without it was just wrong to kill someone without any evidence of without any evidence or something. So showcase your leadership skill that would tell us a bit about your proactiveness, your action orientedness, and the fact that you like to take action, stuff like that. All right, the next question is discuss your contributions to your community. Focus on any special skills or insight you've gained or developed, and how this will influence you as a future dentist. So this is also a good question, and this is basically a community service question. In terms of this question, focus on the strength of the learning. So focus on your learning, right? So they're asking you, how did you, what skills did you gain, or what insight did you gain from your volunteering activities or community service activities that will help you as a future dentist. So examples would be something like, you have helped in the give kids a smile day or something, or maybe you volunteer at a community dental clinic where you provide free treatment to people that people who could not afford dental care. So in those cases, you essentially can talk about the skills that you gain. So for example, the dental assistant skill would be really helpful for you as a future dentist. But on top of that, the compassion and the empathy that you saw in the dentist serving the people, or the learning that there are a lot of people who need help, and that inspires you to become a compassionate dentist who not only care about money but also care about providing access to care for people. So those are some of the learnings that you can talk about and mention in your in that specific question. And this is a community service type of question, which is again, you're gonna talk about the STAR framework, what situation you are in, and it's always better to provide a situation specific example so that they're more clear on the skills that you're gaining or the insights you're gaining, and and kind of like showcasing the skills and not just telling the skills, not just telling me what you've done but showing me what you've done. So is mentioning the ER a good approach for these community-based questions? Yes, it's fine, as long as you showcase the learning that you had. It's about, so for example, if you're working at a ER and you are, let's say, the patient rep, and you are helping the patient, and their family in alleviating their pain by talking to them or by comforting them, and that's a great skills to have. So for example, let's say in the future you have a patient who comes in with like oral cancer or something, and then you have to comfort her in the future, and you have to be that dentist who is helping their patient all the time, and because of the ER volunteering, because of the volunteering that you have done, you have learned to become compassionate, become empathic towards your patients, stuff like that. So the next question: in what area do you feel you have the capacity to self-improve or capacity for self-improvement? So this is a good question. It's also sort of the question that is kind of geared towards what's your weakness. Like what are your weaknesses? And for some people it might be really hard to answer. The reason it's hard to answer is because most of you probably haven't thought about your weaknesses, or didn't give it thought towards what are some of the skills that you should learn, or what are some of the things you should become better at. So again, it's just similar to what's your weakness question. A lot of people talk about their a lot of people talk about their ability to or their inability to juggle multiple tasks and multitask, and they feel that multitasking is something they should get better at. Some people talk about taking too many things on their plate, and maybe specific times to learn to say no. Perhaps we can talk about a specific situation where you realize that you are not the most, you're not the most compassionate person, and you need to work on your compassion. So show a specific example where you can talk about the fact that you're learning to provide better, you're learning to provide better care through learning to become more compassionate. One of the specific example that I can remember right now is to provide better constructive feedbacks. So for example, one of my friend who is very blunt. I mean, I myself, I'm pretty blunt too. So, one of my friend is really, really blunt, and she would just say things in front of people that are just inappropriate. So what she does is she's basically working on becoming better, becoming better listener before she provides any feedback, becoming more attentive to the other person's need before she even say anything, or before she even gives any advice. So that's what they're talking about when they're mentioning self-improvement. So if you mention anything about you want to learn everything about dentistry, that's not really self-improvement, because that's something that's a technical skill. Self-improvement is more of sort of like the soft skills that you're trying to gain out of that will help you become a better dentist in the future. So talk about how to be a better listener. Talk about how to provide better constructive feedback. Something along that line would be more appropriate to talk about. All right. Do you guys have any question in the meantime? All right, good. That's good news. All right, tell us why you should be chosen for admission at the University of Buffalo Dental Medicine. This is the same question that UCSF asks. So I'm gonna go over this briefly, because you should also watch the last video that I did. So what are some of the unique characteristics that you have that will make you successful in dental school? So what makes you really unique? It's a tough question, because they're asking, we have a lot of applicants, we have thousands of applicants, and among them, what makes you special, what makes you unique? And a good answer would be to provide something like the skills that you developed and how that's gonna help you as a future dentist and help you in dental school. So for example, I do talk about Justin, who is a nurse. And Justin is going to dental school right now. He's applying to dental school. So Justin, because of his nursing background, he has a lot of patient interaction skills and patient or let's say patient skills that you need as a future dentist, and that's kind of sets him apart. But if you're not a nurse, I mean, a lot of you are not nurses, or not CDAs, or or RDAs. So if you have a lot of clinical skills, such as, let's say, volunteering skills, you have done a lot of volunteering at the dental office, or you've done a lot of volunteering at a community clinic, you have gotten exposed to clinic settings, you have gotten a lot of clinical exposure in your undergraduate or post undergraduate. So you can talk about that. The level of clinical skills that you have gained will help you become a compassionate dentist, become a dentist who who cares about the well-being of the patient. It's easy to talk about patient skills, because a lot of people are going to talk about patient skills. So if you have something extra, so for example, if you have a leadership skill that you want to showcase, or if you are a published author in a scientific journal, definitely mention those accomplishments that sets you apart. And I don't know what's the space limitation for Buffalo, but let's say if it's 1,000 character, that gives you enough space to talk about 1 or 2 stories, or maybe mention 3 bullet points that will set you apart as a candidate. All right, so do you guys have any question about this specific Buffalo question? Type it in the chat box. Okay, so this is a random school, Eastern Carolina. So funny thing is that Eastern Carolina only accepts from in-state in North Carolina. So if you are interested in Eastern Carolina, you're only applying there because you're North Carolina resident. If you're not a North Carolina resident, you should not apply to Eastern Carolina. You're not gonna get accepted. Okay, so what specifically led you to apply to Eastern Carolina? So basically, why are you applying to Eastern Carolina? So basically, the same question that VCU is asking, the same question that Maryland is asking. Again, it's the same answer. The clinical strength, the opportunity to research, the extension, externship programs, stuff like that. If his school is not good in research, definitely no. Check your facts, check the school website and talk to the students. If a school is good at, is not good in research and you mention that it is, you are gonna have a problem. So make sure you know your facts very well about the school. Describe a time that you collaborated with others in working towards a common goal. What did you learn from that experience? So this is also a teamwork / leadership type experience that you can talk about. Essentially, like for example, a lot of you do not have outside work experience, aside from going to school. So you can always talk about a school project or a volunteering organization that you're serving at, and then you have to collaborate. So talk about a collaboration story. Again, follow the STAR framework. Situation, task, action, and result. What was the situation that you're in? What are you guys trying to do? What was the task that you're assigned to? What is the action that you're taking, and what is the result from that experience? Okay. Describe a crisis in your life and what have you learned from it. This is the same question as before. Describe the adversity of your life and what did you learn from it. How did you react, sort of question. So that's similar. So I'm not going to go over that. In times of academic and personal challenges, who is among your support network? So this is a very specific question. It's talking about who are in your friend circle, who are in your support circle, who can help you while you are having a personal challenge or professional challenge. So basically, talk about someone who you are close to and how they help you. So basically, they're asking in what specific ways is that person supportive? How is that person supportive? So I'm sure that you can talk about someone from your friend circle or from your family that will help you in your tough times. So for example, my mom is always supporting me in bad times and good times. So she always listens to me, and even I can talk about my wife as well. So who is that person in your life that will help you will help you through your challenges? Describe a situation where your attempts at leadership were not successful, and why did you think that was? So for example, what can you talk about when you failed in a leadership situation? It's a tough one because a lot of you, number one, the problem is that a lot of you probably don't have any leadership skill, so you haven't tried anything. A lot of you may have some leadership skills, but you probably haven't failed because you're really you're like that A player who always wins. So in the middle, some people are like, oh, I've tried something, I failed. So let's talk about the failure part, which is very important. So for example, there are many examples that I can give from my life, but they're not going to be relatable to you. But for example, you can talk about a class project that you had to do with a few of your group mates, and it didn't go very well because you tried to step in as a leader, but there was someone who is slacking and didn't do their part. So at the end of the day, you guys got a B- because of one person that didn't pull their weight. That's one example. That's always a case example that you can provide. There are other leadership situations that you can think of. For example, when I decided to not go to dental school, I started a web design company with one of my friend from Brooklyn, and he wasn't a very good guy. I trusted him with my judgment and with my money, and he was not a very good partner. And at the end of the day, our collaboration failed. One second, I'm hearing a lot of noise outside. Let me close the window. 1 second. All right, I'm back. So basically, I didn't have a good experience working with him, and our company failed. That was my first entrepreneurial journey, and the reason it failed was because at one point, he basically betrayed the trust that I put on him. He didn't do the work that the clients were asking him to do, and I wasn't very good at communicating that to him. I wasn't very good at telling him that, dude, you suck at this. You're not doing the job that you're supposed to, and that was the crisis that I faced. So, what was the situation when you try to lead someone and you didn't do a good job, and what did you learn out of it? What did you what did you think went wrong, and how did you think about, how did you go about fixing it, or what would you have done at that time to fix that? So, for example, I would have communicated with with my buddy beforehand, so that our situation wouldn't go to a really bad place. I don't talk to him anymore because I don't trust him. I don't work with him anymore. But if I had to go back and recommunicate that to him, I would have probably be more. I would probably be more stronger. I would probably be talking to him probably every few hours to make sure that he's doing the work that he's supposed to, stuff like that. And what was the learning that you have gone through because of your failure, right? Because in dental school you're gonna lead in dental school you're gonna lead a few teams. After dental school you're gonna be a leader in your clinic and in your volunteer. Let's say if you're a dentist, you're gonna lead a team of hygienist, assistant, and a practice manager, blah blah. What kind of leader are you going to be? Are you always going to succeed? You're probably not going to succeed all the time. So what are you going to do to improve your chances of succeeding? What are you going to do to not fail as much? And what you're going to come across situations where you're probably not going to know things to do, or you're probably not going to know what to do in general. In those circumstances, what actions are you going to take to improve those circumstances? That's what they're trying to get at in this question. Now, does anyone have any question about Eastern Carolina? I know it's a random school to talk about, but a lot of Carolina residents are going to apply to this school, and they have a good number of supplemental statement that they are asking for. All right. So next one, Ohio State. So Ohio State is asking, how was your undergraduate experience how has your undergraduate experience influenced your outlook on life? Okay, so this is a different type of question. What influence does your undergraduate what influence does your undergraduate have on your life, or on the outlook of your life? So, for example, for myself, I'm coming from a pretty conservative, religious background. When I went to the undergraduate, my undergraduate is very liberal. It's much different from my conservative background. So I had to become more sensitive, or more accommodating to other people's need. For example, like in my school, a lot of things are accepted that I thought initially that I wouldn't accept, because I'm coming from a really conservative background. And I would not say things in a public setting like this, but because of going to this school, I became much more tolerating towards other people's need and necessities in their lives, and also became much more accepting to their to who they are as a person, versus before, when I was before college, I was not as accepting to those circumstances. So you can talk about that, talk about becoming more accepting of other people's and other personalities, becoming much more tolerating, becoming much more socially aware of yourself as a person. So sort of things like that that you have learned because of your undergraduate experience. And I'm sure undergraduate experience where you are making tons of friends, and you're learning from them every day. So essentially, you are the average of 5 people you're hanging out with. So what are some of the things that your friend have in common, and what are some of the things that you're learning from them? Those are also outlooks that are being changed because of hanging out with them, or because of interacting with people at your school. Okay, so that's a fair question. Number 2 is, describe a community to which you belong and share a way in which you have made a difference in that community. So this is a very very specific question, but it can be generalized into any community that you can talk about. So for example, if I am part of a college, I'm part of that college community. But if I am part of a neighborhood, I'm also part of that neighborhood community. For example, when I was at Penn, I was doing my Penn undergraduate. I was part of the college community, but as a college community, we lived in a bubble. We didn't really know much about what was going on in West Philadelphia region and how poor people were in the neighborhood. So, one of the year, so I think in my last year, I decided to stay outside of campus. I decided to stay on in a really poor, impoverished neighborhood to get to know them better, to work with them, to work with with the children. So I volunteered at multiple middle schools and also volunteered at an after-school tutoring program, where I helped students with their homework and whatnot. But also I helped advise the volunteering organization to become more efficient at connecting with the schools that are nearby. So for example, I created a strategic partnership with Penn, Drexel, and Temple, so that those universities are going to send volunteers down to those volunteering organizations and the neighboring tutoring center. And because of that partnership, Penn students or Temple students or Drexel students are much more aware of that community, of that Bangladeshi community that I was part of, and they are much more attuned to their need at the moment than maybe 10 years ago. So that's a change and difference that I made in the community. So I can talk about that. But what if you haven't done something like that? Have you fostered a relationship with your own college community? Have you done something to make a difference in that community? For example, let's say you believe in a cause that that is really important to you, animal rights or something like that. Being vegan, something along that line, and you specifically talk about that in your in your college, and you are an animal right activist or something of that sort, and you gather together with other people and raise awareness about animal rights. That's also creating awareness within a community that didn't have much awareness before you coming into the scene. Any example that showcases that you are part of a community within college or in the volunteering setting would be acceptable, and share what you have done to improve that community. The next question is, describe a challenging circumstance in your life and how you coped with that challenge. This is exactly the same question as the adversity question that we went over before, so I'm not going to touch it. But basically, you talk about a situation that was tough on you and what did you learn out of it. Alright, so why UCLA, why Iowa? Same question in just for different school, similar answer. Clinical strength, research strength, talk about patient population, talk about opportunities within the school for internship and externship, and those are the things that you should talk about. And if you're talking about research, definitely mention a specific research mentor that you want to work with, or talk about a specific research topic that you are interested in pursuing. And again, their Facebook pages are amazing. I know UCLA for sure, they have a really good Facebook page that you can explore and know more about. Let's go to some random question. So share with us something about yourself that is not addressed elsewhere in your application. This is a question I think we covered in UCSF last week, 2 weeks ago. But the more important thing here is to know that you don't have a lot of space in your AADSAS application to talk about outside of dental stuff, and so this is a good place for you to talk about. Let's say I've been learning to play the piano for last 10 years, or I've been learning to do origami for the last few years, something like that. This is a good place to talk about that. You're not talking about accomplishments, but you're talking about more like things that you enjoy, things that are hobbies that you have. So for example, one of my students really likes to do motorbiking, and he talked about his motorbiking experiences there. He also talked about he's organizing a motorbiking race in his city, and just raising awareness about biking and stuff like that. So that's something, if you're interested, if you have a hobby that you're really passionate about, you can talk about that in your application that is not mentioned anywhere else. And this does not have to be anything healthcare specific. It does not have to be dental specific. It just have to be something personal that you want to share. So for example, I really like computer games. I like playing video games. So if you are the same way, you can talk about playing video games and becoming really immersed into some of the video games that you enjoy, and this is honestly, it's just an open forum. You can talk about anything that you want, and as long as it has not been mentioned already in your application and it's meaningful that you think you should add in some, it adds a flavor of your personality in the application, definitely mention that as as in that part of the application. So this is the last slide that I have. Let me turn to the chat. So I don't have anything else to show you guys. I covered a lot of things within 76 minutes, so I'm pretty much on time, but I'm going to take questions right now. I would like to see what questions you have, and I pretty much covered everything that you guys asked on the chat, so I'm pretty happy about that. So let me know if you are going to ask any question, type that in the chat box. So this is going to be an open forum. So someone is asking, did you say Boston had a good Facebook page? I think Boston University does have a good Facebook page. So does UCLA, UCSF. They all have like really good, great Facebook pages where you can go and basically learn more about the school. For example, one time I saw a lot of new research popping up on Boston University's or UCLA's Facebook page. So it's a great way for you to understand what are some of the recent developments in in Boston University or UCLA or any other school. Their Facebook page is a gold mine. So just research through it. You might also find students to the Facebook page that you can reach out to and become familiar with them and reach out to them and ask them questions about different activities that are going on in the school, different things that they would enjoy as a student there, etc. All right, so if you guys don't have any more question, I would like to end the presentation right now, and this is gonna be uploaded on YouTube pretty soon, so stay tuned. So let me know when I'll let you guys know when this is published, and you can go ahead and check it out. If I have missed any question, definitely let me know. I can try to do another presentation in next week or so to cover more questions on the supplementary application. And then after that, I'm moving towards interview skills and building interview building interview skills for my student. So that's coming up soon. Discuss your use of past present of alcohol, tobacco, and drug. Okay, so this is a question from Loma Linda. Okay, so Loma Linda is asking about your past and present use of alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. So number one, okay, so if you're not Christian, don't apply to Loma Linda. And then if you are applying to Loma Linda, you have to tell them that what level of drug, alcohol, or tobacco you use. So so in terms of should we mention if we attended a protest or anything of that sort towards peers regarding what? Regarding the topic? Yeah, you can definitely mention that. You can talk about if you do not like alcohol, tobacco, and you're raising awareness on campus against them. For example, you're part of MUD, which is Mothers Against Drunk Driving, which is an organization I think you can become part of. You can definitely talk about that. Or if you're raising awareness against alcohol or tobacco or drug use. So for example, a lot of the time, I know pre-dental students do some kind of seminars or forum where they would talk to other students about not doing tobacco or not doing drugs, so because it really hurts your oral health, and this is something that you could talk about in that portion of the application. It's perfectly acceptable. What is a good number of schools to apply to? Um, that's a good question. That depends on who you are as an applicant. So if you have a good GPA, I would say, you know, if you have a GPA, decent GPA 3.4 to 3.6, you should apply to 10 to 15 schools. I would say 13 is an average. 13, 14, 15 is an average. You know, those numbers are an average. But if you are interested, if you have low GPA, you should apply to more than 15 schools. I'd say 18, 19, or 20. I've seen someone apply to 25 schools, which isn't necessary, but it's something that improves your chances. But you know, if you work with me on the school selection, I do have a school selection that you can work with me on if you want to. The other thing that I do want to show is, let me go back to YouTube. The other thing that do you know if each school's application is submitted separately or if the entire thing is submitted? So if it depends on how you want to submit it. So for example, if you finish one AADSAS application, one or two AADSAS application, which you can do that, you can always add schools later on if you want to. So this is the supplemental statement page of my of the services that I provide. So those are the schools that are on the list, and I'm also adding more schools every other day. So if you have any question about the supplemental services, you know, reach out to me and I can take care of those services for you. All right, I'm getting more questions. You can individually yeah, that's right. That's right. You can do it all at once, or you can individually send the schools. Does anyone have any more question? Otherwise, I think it's a good time to stop and kind of take a pause, because I've been talking for the last 82 minutes, and I I think I'm losing my voice. Oh God, that's okay. I can lose my voice for a few days. But guys, yeah, with all seriousness, let me know if you have any questions. Shoot me an email at dentalschoolcoach@gmail.com. I'm typing that again, at gmail.com, so that you can get the help that you need. And I always tell my students that it's never a bad thing to ask for help. Not asking for help is a bad thing, but if you need help, you should ask for it. You should ask for it. Alrighty, thanks everyone. Have a good day.